experience, Shola, is affordable home ownership possible in today's economy?
Yes, it's possible. Yes, it may be difficult. Yes, it may be a tough journey, but definitely with a little bit creativity there, with a little thoughtfulness there, with a little responsibility and accountability on the part of key players, yes, we are steps closer to affordable home ownership.
But why do so many people believe that home ownership is out of their reach? Why?
Different people have different goals. I tend to joke with this that a lot of us look at life from the lens in which we've experienced it. So for somebody who every day battles with regulators, who battles with bank, everybody is dragging him front, left, and center because of the cost of construction, cost of materials, that conversation is definitely going to get a different answer. So the reason why it makes different meanings for different people is because one, people are different. Two, financial capabilities are different. Three, exposure is different. Four, our line of approach is also different. Some people get lucky and meet professionals who guide them properly. And so even though they have to pay professional fees, they end up having a smooth sale journey. While on the other side, some people think they can outsmart the market and then fall into the hands of wrong people, and so they get burnt, and this becomes a difficult, painful experience. So, like I said, different goals, different exposures, different lens. But one of the things that remains true is, regardless of how you're looking at it, some things will remain equal. And how well we can innovate around those things is what will make the difference. And I think this should be the balance between either sides of the conversation, whether you believe it's possible, whether you believe it's not possible, whether you believe affordable is vague. The fact remains that as much as we can help people come into the market at their comfortable entry point, can make it so for them that they are not sacrificing quality of life. Because definitely at any point of that pyramid or at any point of that journey, there are sacrifices. But one thing you should not sacrifice is the quality of your life.
So, what does affordable actually mean when it comes to owning a property, buying a land, building a house?
Affordable is not cheap. Affordable does not mean less costly. Because those, if you're looking at it from the surface definition of the words, cheap is different from expensive, expensive is different from costly, costly is different from affordable. And so because of the relativity of the subject, I will just dwell on genuine livability. Lagos always makes perfect examples, either as scapegoats or as relatable or as relatable display. For people like me, jump bus, cost of transportation, let's put it at least 3,000 naira per week. 3,000 times five, that's 15,000 times four, that's 60,000 times 12 months, that's 720 times maybe 3 years, that's already 2.1 million, assuming everything remains constant as this. So when you look at that cost of transportation alone, you see that if you save that 720 over 20 years, or you've been able to assess some financial instruments to help you move closer to your work zone, that would have been a better choice. And so that's what I mean when I say livability, quality of life, living in places that support your quality of life, that brings you closer to the kind of community you want, the kind of friends you want, the kind of neighborhood you want, the kind of lifestyle you want to live, the kind of people, the network you want to have. We used to say that a neighborhood is as important as those that live within the neighborhood. And so these are the things that actually make for affordable.
There are particular groups of people who are mostly affected by the housing crisis.
First of all, I don't like doing data because the strength of data is equal its weakness. Data doesn't give you context. It just gives you the figure. Yes, the truth is in our cities, we feel it more because a lot of people believe there are opportunities in the city. So population density makes it harder for people to access quality housing. That's one. Also, demand and supply. I don't want to go into all of these technicalities. Definitely affect the market, affect choice architecture, affect what's available in the market.
What are the ongoing costs of homeownership that people often overlook, and how can one best prepare for them?
So first of all, there are no hidden costs in housing. There is a possibility that there are some things you're not prepared for, or you were not properly informed about, or you were not properly educated, or maybe you thought you could figure it out yourself and you didn't work with a professional. So that is when it becomes hidden cost. In places where there are no such thing as basic as roads, as basic as electricity framework, there are no safety network, there's no health services around. And so you realize that somebody just has some reserve funds and goes into a particular section of the city, buys it up, develops it, interlocks, installs electricity infrastructure, drainage, even maybe provides water and all of that. At the end of the day, the reality is all these costs are transferred down. So really in itself, there are no hidden costs. It's just either failure of the professional to advise properly or the failure of the customer or the client or the homeowner to seek professional help.
I dare to say that when it comes to owning your own home, you shouldn't be afraid to ask any question. You should be bold enough to ask, what is this? How is this happening? When is this going to happen? Who am I paying this for? Why am I making this payment? It's very important.
Because what we're doing is actually just being creative about the cost. Except if maybe tomorrow my dad becomes the president and I can then become a Lagos land distributor. Until then, we cannot change the cost of land, we cannot change the cost of cement, we cannot change the cost of professional service, we cannot even change the cost of service charge. But what we can do is innovate around it. Ownership is not new, but the idea is two, three, four, five, 10, 1,000, 1,000,000 people come together to do one thing together. That's why if you've seen some of our posts, you say it's like cow sharing, where one person cannot afford a cow, and so everybody contributes together, slaughter, distribute, and everybody gets equal parts of all the parts. Instead of looking for 400 million to come, break this into stages. Start with land, remove all of those things, and then cut the rest into four so that each part, instead of now looking for maybe the land at that point is 200 million, each part now becomes 50 million. And so with the 50 million, you can start that journey that you would have needed 400 million upfront to start. Apart from land, there is the cost of documentation, there is the cost of design, there's the cost of approval. We then say, okay, you also don't need to do this by yourself. Even though individual unit is different, I might want a two-bedroom. Next person may want a three-bedroom. Next person may want a four-bedroom. We want different things. We can combine it. That's what architects do. And so we work how all those four separate properties look like one so that it goes to approval as one. And that's why the technicality of architects come, flexibility is what we're actually offering. So that with another maybe 2 million, instead of looking for 8 million on your own, you can access the same services that have delivered that same 400 million building. So then construction starts. That building is going to cost you maybe another 100 million to build. Yes, that we cannot run away from that because the cost of cement is the cost of cement. But then there are certain alternatives that can be recommended to reduce that cost. We'll show you how it's going to be done. So there are few value innovation that we can bring in when it now comes to construction methodology and construction materials that still achieve the same result, the same durability, the same quality, but at lower price. But there are situations where, oh, you don't have that on anywhere. And so you have to start slowly. And so we come up with a framework where you can still do that and still make it presentable and then finish it over time. This is what we call incremental housing. This is something we are familiar with. We're just bringing in, efficacy into it to make it trendy so that you can be proud to bring your friends to your house, even though it's just one room that is functional in that house. Your passers-by will see you and are like, oh, this house is mighty. But inside, you're the one that knows that, okay, only one room is functional. Then when you become comfortable, you then extend to the second room. That room then becomes the sitting room. And then the next room, that second room becomes the kitchen. Then the next room, and before you know you've completed, that's a that comes into the construction. So these are the cost savings. These are the ways to ease the burden by bringing many people together so that more people can have access to housing. Yeah, it might take longer. Yeah, it might be more demanding. You might lose some nights of sleep thinking of where the next money will come. Because definitely the developer has factored in his overhead, has factored in his cost, has factored in inflation, he has factored in loan repayments and also profit, even before giving you that 400 million. So if at all nothing is saved, you've been able to cut off all of those extras that are transferred to you. Because the truth is, even government is running from subsidized housing. And so the logic of waiting for somebody to build a subsidized housing and tell you this 5 bedroom bungalow is going to give me 3 million and you can take it will not work. Everybody is battling with the economy, everybody is battling with inflation, everybody is battling with cost of material. And so what we can do is just come together, support ourselves, and that's why we always say and we're building a community of people to come together so that we can ease one another of these burdens. So this is the kind of idea that we're bringing in when we're saying community, when we're saying sustainability, when we're saying bringing the village effect into the city. Let me backtrack into some foundation knowledge about co-ownership. Co-ownership is not new. Co-ownership is widely adopted and supported by any physical planning authority. Because the idea is we can be calling it any name, we can call it lamp, we can call it this, we can call it that, but the idea, the framework is people come together to own one property. And that works everywhere. Number one, the legality of it is 100%. And then one of the things that supports some co-ownership structure is because all that the government cares about is it these people that truly own it? Can they give us our own due? Hope they will not be a nuisance to other people in the community. Because I think I can put all the government oversight functions when it comes to planning into those three headings. As long as those three things are in place, the only thing that the government will want to know is okay, we cannot possibly be talking to these 100 people that own this one property. So they need one person. So by structure or by framework, there is going to be somebody who represents the interest of that group or that plot or that property. What PetitHaus does is, apart from all of those cost saving, is we mediate, moderate, and coordinate. Just stand in line, stand in gap, build this relationship until they all accountable to this shared responsibility. We'll also be supporting LAPCA to ensure that quality is not compromised, to make sure that everything is in line for the safety and security of everybody. In fact, we will be the first LAPCA to say no, you cannot be like that.
Somebody is asking, how can I determine if I'm financially ready to own a home instead of renting?
Let me look at it from the surface. I think what I would advise is one, what are your goals? That same conversation to a business owner is different from somebody who has a growing family. For somebody, a parent with children who has goals or plans for stability, because one of the things that we often overlook is how much of a contribution that stability of not even having to worry about rent plays in growth and progress of families. If you're ready is one, what is your income? How much of that is disposable? How much of that can you sacrifice? And if push comes to shove, how much can you generate? It comes back to economics of things. And you look at, okay, how much do I have? How much am I making? How much of that can I sacrifice? And how much of that can I just lock up and look away? Because that's really what home ownership is. Just throw it in it and look away. Once you can determine and ask and answer those questions, it becomes easier to decide whether or not you're ready. And then, so if I may add, by the time it becomes a burden, some things, there are also some things that economics will not tell you. Your gut feeling, your mind will just tell you for that. You will just know. So sometimes it's just a gut feeling, sometimes it's pure mathematics.
Thank you. We've been talking about co-ownership and incremental housing. I will be showing us a video in there, but there any plan on ground and where? Like, what's next? So, how do we move forward from here?
Currently, we have opportunities to start now. One of the things that we first consider is honest pricing, irrespective of whatever the area is. And the second thing is the location itself. What are the things that exist around that place? Uh, is it at least close to existing communities, existing facilities, health services? Is it close to, in case of emergency, is it close to either a police station, yes, security forces, and also is it also close to a school? What kind of security system exists around that location? And that helps us to streamline it down into places that we feel that we ourselves can buy. First of all, we see this as something that we ourselves would partake of. There are four locations. So the first is ShopRite, and I'm starting with ShopRite because we removed it from co-ownership. So I can easily just throw that on one side. That is for full ownership, 45 million per plot. So now that that is gone, we have Lakwe. There is a 44 million per 600 square meter, which makes it perfect for five people to go on. So it's perfect for five-way splits. There is also massive land in Mowe. There are 1,500, but we always recommend the 1,000 because the 1,000 gives more flexibility. While the 500 is good because it gives a four-way split. If we're looking at co-ownership, four people can comfortably split it equally. But the 1,000 gives better value because this now is split into six. And with that six, with what you're getting in six, you don't have to do a duplex. You don't have to do a higher floor. If you want, so be it, but it's big enough to take a two-bedroom bungalow, better than typical Lagos standard two-bedroom with all the conveniences. And so I always personally recommend that. Now, coming to the third one that I said only people in on our waiting list have access to is one in Abuja. One of the reasons why we've not publicized that is because we don't have an office in Abuja yet. But interestingly and luckily, the land belongs to a family member of one of our community members, and so she felt impressed enough with what we've done, and they said, "Oh, my mom has one of these properties, and she's willing to allow people just have access to affordable ownership. That a 1,000 square meter plot going for 15 million for the land. But this now, for this, there is a caveat that the titling and documentation will be handled by the co-owners. Quickly, as recap, there is a 500 square meter way of further at 2.3. There is also Lakwe 600 square meter, five-way split starts at 8.8 million.
All right, I think that answers the question for is it 45 million naira for a land or a house? So the whole plot is 45 million naira split across five or six people. So instead of one person paying 45 million naira, you are paying 8.8 million, starting from 8.8 million for your own slot, and you can build whatever you want to build on it. So I was going to share the link to the PetitHaus store where you can see all the listings and the titles that they have, and you can see how it works. Before I share the link, I would like to share a picture of what this land split looks like. So what I'm sharing now is a piece of land shared by four people. So this is what it looks like. There is slot A, slot B, slot C, and slot D.
If you can zoom in a little bit so that the image is clearer, I just want to at least help so that people can make sense of what is in the image. So there is a red dotted line. That red dotted line represents the plot, the full plot. So in the case of this 44 million naira plot, that red dot is the 600 square meter or the 500 square meter, as the case may be. So if you look around, the next to the red dot are the gray areas, the light gray. That is showing you the compound. there is something government calls setback and airspace. This is the distance between the fence and the line of the building. So we remove that because by standard, apart from satisfying government, it's actually necessary for safety. The one in front is mainly because of electricity. Safety implication of that is because that 6 meter is about the height of an electric pole. So in case an electric pole falls, I'm saying when it comes to safety, because an electric pole falls, it doesn't fall on your own. So I know a lot of people don't know that. That's why I just have to put that in. And the distance between the fence and the back is typically that is averagely, if most buildings are well positioned, it's expected that if anything happens and that building comes down, whether by force of nature or it's pulled down or by mistake, the rubbles will not collapse onto the next building. So that space gives that buffer. So that's why, apart from approval, those are the major reasons why they're important. Now, the next thing you see is these white zones that have shapes, icons of houses that write slot A, slot B. So when we remove that gray area entirely, we then divide what is left equally. That is now where your house will be. That is what becomes the terrace or the duplex or the bungalow, whatever you want to use it for. It then goes to design. From design goes to approval. So basically, why we say some prices start from is because apart from just sharing this slot, before you buy that slot, you will see how much you're going to pay for design. You see how much you're going to pay for approval. Now, for approval, it's tricky because you may be paying more than government will charge, or you may be paying less. Whatever the case is, if you've paid more, you will collect your change because there is, all these things have receipts. So if you paid less, by the time the process is done, you will refund us that change. Trust goes both ways. So that is why oftentimes we hear starts from, so that is that about it. So the slots are now where the buildings will start, and so individual building is different from one another. And by the time you build, the walls also are separate from one another. If you've seen a double wall, that is what we have, that's what you will see by the time the buildings stand next to each other. So when you zoom out, when you come out, or somebody driving by on the street, it looks like a typical terrace, it looks like a typical one building. But when you come close, that's when you now see that slot A, slot B, they are actually separated, they are not together. So I hope I've been able to give better context into that.
Oh yes,
So
thank
slot
you
A will
so
now be
much.
that 45 divided by 4. Slot B will be the 45 divided by 4, and like that. So that's how it applies. In cases where it's 15 million, it becomes slot A divided by 4. And then by the time you want to pay, we then have your design fee, approval. There's a calculator that calculates all of that. So there's a prompt, you answer the prompt, and it calculates it, and you see if you make your decision right on the spot.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. So, to recap all what we've been talking about today. Yes, land is not getting cheaper, but we are trying to, what we are doing is to help you, you know, access it at a fraction, fractional, in a way that you are not having to look for the all, but you can buy what you can afford. And one of the things we didn't add is if you want slots A and B together, it's possible you can have both. If what you can afford is only slot A, that's fine. If you want to buy 3 slots altogether, yes, you can. But everything is within boundaries. They say, okay, this is yours, and this is what is the other person's own. In the chat session, you can see that I have dropped the link to the app where you can see all of our listings and you can proceed to buy yours in there. And I also dropped some YouTube links to show you the different listings and the directions from the main road, the distances from major points and landmarks out there. We appreciate your presence this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that we've been able to convince you and not confuse you that affordable home ownership is a possibility and you do not have to break the bank for that. Thank you so much for joining us.